The Empire had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. They had conquered 93 different alien species. They had destroyed countless planets and taken everything they wanted. In all that time, no one had ever stopped them. No one had ever fought back and won. They believed they were the greatest beings in the universe, and for a very long time they were right. When their ships first detected Earth, they saw a small blue planet filled with primitive creatures. The humans had only recently learned to leave their own world. They had simple technology. They fought wars against each other over small pieces of land. To the humans were nothing more than insects waiting to be crushed. The attack came without warning on a bright spring morning. Park was a general in the Korean military. He was 52 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. On that morning, he was in a meeting in Seoul, discussing budget reports and training schedules. It was boring work, but it was peaceful work. He had no idea that peace was about to end forever. The first sign was the sky turning red. People on the street stopped and looked up. Some took pictures with their phones. Some laughed nervously. Then the beams of light came down from space and the laughter stopped. Seoul burned in seconds. The heat was so intense that buildings melted like candles. Millions of people died before they even knew what was happening. The military headquarters collapsed around General Park, and he fell into darkness. All around the world the same thing was happening. New York City vanished in a flash of white light. Tokyo burned. London crumbled. Mumbai, Cairo, Paris, Moscow, every major city on Earth was hit at the same time. They did not send soldiers. They did not make demands first. They simply started killing. In 6 hours, 800 million people died. General Park woke up buried under concrete and steel. His left arm was broken and blood covered his face. He could hear screaming in the distance and the crackling of fires that seemed to burn everywhere. Slowly, painfully, he pulled himself out of the rubble. What he saw would haunt him for the rest of his life. Seoul was gone. Where a beautiful city had once stood, there was now only ash and ruins. Bodies lay everywhere. Some were burned so badly that he could not tell if they had been men or women, adults or children. The air smelled like smoke and death. Above the ruins, massive alien ships floated in the sky. They were shaped like long black triangles, each one bigger than a mountain. They hung in the air silently, watching, waiting. Then they broadcast their message. It came through every radio, every television, every phone that still worked. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated into every human language. "People of Earth," the voice said, "you now belong to the Empire. Your cities have been destroyed to demonstrate our power. Further resistance will result in total extinction. Submit, and some of you will be allowed to live. Resist, and you will all die. You have 24 hours to respond." For a moment the world was silent. 800 million dead. Cities turned to ash, alien ships filling the skies. It seemed like the end of everything. But humanity did not submit. In the mountains of Provence, far from the burning cities, Doctor was pulled from a collapsed research facility. She was 38 years old, a brilliant physicist who had studied the mysteries of the universe. She had been visiting family in a small town when the attack came. The town survived, but her family did not. Her parents, her brother, her young niece, all gone in an instant when a beam of light hit a nearby city. When the rescue workers found her, she was not crying. Her eyes were dry and hard like stone. She looked up at the alien ships in the sky and she made a silent promise to herself. She would understand their technology. She would find their weaknesses, and she would help destroy them. Within days, she was taken to a secret underground base. Scientists from all over the world were being gathered there, anyone who had survived and had useful knowledge. Their mission was simple: study the enemy and find a way to fight back. They got their first opportunity when a scout ship crashed in the Pacific Ocean. No one knew why it crashed. Perhaps it malfunctioned, or perhaps a brave pilot from one of Earth's remaining air forces managed to damage it before dying. Either way, the ship was recovered and brought to the underground base. Doctor led the team that studied it. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever created. The engines used principles of physics that humans had only theorized about. The weapons could generate heat equal to the surface of the sun. The hull was made of metals that did not exist on Earth. But the aliens had made a mistake. They had assumed humans were too primitive to understand anything. They had not encrypted their systems or hidden their secrets. It was like leaving a loaded gun where a child could find it, except this child was much smarter than they realized. Meanwhile, Lieutenant was fighting a different kind of battle. He was 29 years old, a fighter pilot who had been in the air when the attack began. His entire squadron had been destroyed in the first minutes. He had watched his friends die, their planes exploding like fireworks against the alien ships, but had survived. He did not know how or why, but he had managed to land his damaged plane in a rice field and escape. Now he was part of what remained of Earth's air forces, a few hundred pilots flying outdated planes against an enemy with godlike technology. Every mission was a suicide run. The ships were nearly impossible to damage. Their shields absorbed missiles like water-absorbing stones. Their weapons could track and destroy human planes from miles away. For every scout ship they managed to bring down, they lost 50 planes and 50 brave pilots. But they kept fighting, and every battle taught them something new. Notice that the shields flickered for a split second after taking a hit. He noticed that their targeting systems had trouble tracking objects that moved in unpredictable patterns. He noticed that they always attacked in the same formations, following the same tactics, as if they had never needed to adapt before. He wrote down everything he learned and sent it to the scientists in the underground base. Every piece of information was valuable. Every weakness could be exploited. The governments of the world, which had spent centuries fighting each other, now came together. There was no more talk of borders or politics or old grudges. There was only survival. The United Earth Defense Council was formed, with representatives from every nation that still existed, and at the head of its military forces stood General Park. He stood before the council with his arm in a sling and bandages on his face. Behind him was a screen showing images of the destruction, the dead cities, the mass graves, the alien ships that still patrolled the skies. "They think we are finished," General Park said. His voice was quiet but steady. "They think we will kneel and beg for mercy. They think we are weak." He looked at each member of the council. "They are wrong." He pointed at the screen. "We will mourn our dead. We will bury our children, and then we will learn. We will study their technology until we understand it better than they do. We will train soldiers who can fight in ways they have never seen. We will build weapons that will make them fear us." His voice grew harder. "This is not the end of humanity. This is the beginning of our war. And I swear to you, on the graves of 800 million people, we will make them pay for what they have done." The room was silent for a long moment. Then one by one the council members stood. They did not cheer or applaud. They simply stood, their faces grim and determined, united in a single purpose. Outside, the ships continued their patrols, scanning for any signs of resistance. They saw a broken world, a defeated species, a planet ready to be harvested. They did not see the fires burning in the hearts of every survivor. They did not see the scientists working day and night in hidden laboratories. They did not see the soldiers training in secret camps, learning new ways to kill. They had made their first mistake when they attacked Earth. They would make many more, and in the end, they would learn the terrible truth that every human already knew. Humanity does not surrender, humanity does not forget, and humanity never ever stops fighting. 5 years passed after the burning of Earth. 5 years of darkness, suffering, and silent rage. They had established their occupation with cold efficiency. Massive orbital stations hung above the planet like metal moons, constantly watching, constantly monitoring. On the ground, they built harvesting facilities, giant machines that dug into the earth and pulled out metals, minerals, and resources. They took everything they wanted and gave nothing back. The surviving humans were treated like animals. They did not bother learning human names or languages. They did not care about human culture or history. To them, humans were simply pests that happened to live on a useful planet. Sometimes they would kill a few thousand humans just to remind everyone who was in charge. They called it pest control. But in the shadows, far from eyes, humanity was preparing. Captain had been a Special Forces soldier before the attack. She was 34 years old, small in size but fierce in spirit. During the first days of the occupation, she had watched soldiers execute her entire unit. She had escaped by hiding under the bodies of her friends, lying perfectly still while their blood soaked into her clothes. That experience had changed her. She no longer felt fear. She no longer felt anything except a cold, burning desire for revenge. Now she led a guerrilla cell of 200 fighters hidden in the mountains of the Korean peninsula. They attacked patrols at night, striking fast and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive, but was not interested in simply killing aliens. She wanted something more valuable. She wanted prisoners. "We need to understand them," she explained to her fighters. "We need to know how they think, how they feel, what they fear. An enemy you understand is an enemy you can defeat." Capturing them alive was incredibly difficult. Their armor was strong, their weapons were deadly, and they would rather die than be taken prisoner, but was patient. She studied their patrol patterns. She learned their weaknesses, and one night her team managed to capture 2 soldiers alive. The prisoners were sent to the underground base where Doctor was working. She had spent 5 years studying the crashed scout ship, and now she had living subjects to examine. The work was disturbing. She had to cut them open, study their organs, learn how their bodies worked, but she did not hesitate. Every piece of knowledge was a weapon. She discovered many things. They breathed a different mixture of gases than humans. They were sensitive to certain frequencies of light that did not bother human eyes. Their blood carried a chemical that could be disrupted by specific radiation. And most importantly, their brains worked differently than human brains. They were highly intelligent, but they were not creative. Their civilization had not changed significantly in thousands of years. They followed rules and traditions without questioning them. They used the same tactics in battle that they had used for centuries, because those tactics had always worked. They could not imagine an enemy who would adapt and change faster than they could. This was humanity's greatest advantage. In the city of, or what was left of it, a man named Minyu was working on something incredible. Minyu was 41 years old. Before the attack, he had been a shipyard welder, a simple man who built ships for fishing and cargo. He had never been a soldier or a scientist, but he understood metal and machines in a way that few people did. He could look at a piece of technology and see how it worked, how it could be improved, how it could be changed. When he first saw the engine from the crashed scout ship, he stared at it for 3 days straight, barely eating or sleeping. He took it apart piece by piece, examined every component, and then put it back together. When he was done, he understood something they themselves had forgotten. Their engine design was old and inefficient. It worked, but it could work much better. Minyu began to improve it. The United Earth Defense Council had given him resources, materials salvaged from the ruins, equipment stolen from facilities, workers who were willing to risk their lives. In a hollowed-out asteroid in the outer solar system, far from patrols, Minyu and his team began building something that humanity had only dreamed of before. Starships, real starships, ships that could travel between stars, fight in space, and carry humanity's vengeance to the aliens who had hurt them. The work was slow and dangerous. Every supply run risked discovery. Every new worker had to be carefully checked to make sure they were not spies. But month by month, year by year, the ships took shape. The first ship was named Fury. It was small and ugly, built from scraps and salvaged parts, but it worked. Its engines were faster than anything the had. Its weapons were designed based on 5 years of studying alien technology. Its hull was reinforced with new materials that Doctor's team had invented. When Minu saw Fury complete its first test flight, he wept, not from sadness but from hope. Meanwhile, the occupation continued. They grew comfortable. They reduced their garrison fleet from 50 ships to 20, then from 20 to 10. They sent their best soldiers to other parts of the Empire, leaving only a skeleton crew to watch over the humans. They did not see the secret training camps in remote forests and underground bunkers. They did not see the millions of men and women learning to fight with weapons both old and new. They did not see the stolen data that human hackers were pulling from systems, learning codes and patrol routes and fleet movements. General Park spent those 5 years preparing. His hair had turned completely white, and his face was marked with new scars and old sorrows. He had buried too many friends, attended too many secret funerals, written too many letters to families who would never know how their loved ones had really died. But he had not given up. He would never give up. He traveled constantly, visiting training camps and secret facilities, always moving to avoid detection. He met with resistance leaders from every continent, coordinating their efforts, turning 100 scattered groups into one unified army. Lieutenant, now Captain, had become one of the best pilots in humanity's secret fleet. He had survived dozens of missions, each one teaching him more about how to fight the alien ships. He had lost count of how many pilots he had trained, knowing that most of them would die in the coming battle. On the night before the 10th anniversary of the attack, General Park gathered his commanders in a hidden bunker deep under the mountains. Around him stood the people who had become humanity's hope: Doctor with her scientific knowledge, Captain with her guerrilla fighters, Captain with his pilots, Engineer Minu with his fleet of 47 starships. They looked at a holographic display showing Earth surrounded by stations and patrol ships. It looked impossible. 10 years ago, they would have said it was impossible. But they had learned that nothing was impossible for humanity. General Park stood before them, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was about to say. Tomorrow marks 10 years since they took everything from us. 10 years of hiding, 10 years of suffering, 10 years of preparation, and now the time for hiding is over. He pointed at the display. We have 47 ships. They have 10 in orbit and maybe 200 in nearby systems. The numbers are against us. The technology still favors them. Any reasonable person would say we should wait, build more ships, gather more strength. He paused. But we are not reasonable people. We are humans, and we have waited long enough. He looked at each face in the room. Tomorrow we take back our planet. Tomorrow we show what we have become. Tomorrow we begin our revenge. The commanders nodded. There was no fear in their eyes, only determination. They had all lost too much to feel fear anymore. That night across the planet, humanity held its breath. Secret messages went out on hidden frequencies. Resistance cells armed themselves. Pilots climbed into their ships. Soldiers kissed their families goodbye, knowing many would not return. And in the sky, the ships continued their lazy patrols, completely unaware that the insects they had ignored for 10 years were about to rise up and strike. General Park looked up at the stars, thinking of the empire that stretched across them. They believed they were masters of the galaxy. They believed nothing could challenge their power. They were wrong. We are coming for you, he whispered into the darkness. You attacked our home, you killed our families, you thought we were nothing. He clenched his fists. Now you will learn what humanity can do when it has nothing left to lose. The liberation of Earth began at exactly midnight on the 10th anniversary of the attack. 47 human starships emerged from behind the moon in perfect formation. They had traveled through the asteroid belt, staying hidden among the rocks and debris, creeping closer to Earth over several weeks. Now they were in position, and they were ready. Admiral Shin stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable. She was 42 years old, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much pain. During the first attack, she had been a teenage refugee, fleeing Seoul with her grandmother. Her grandmother had died in her arms 3 days later, killed by radiation sickness from the bombardment. Had spent 10 years training for this moment. She had studied every naval battle in human history, from ancient sea fights to modern warfare. She had learned everything humanity knew about tactics, and she had developed new strategies that the aliens had never encountered. Her first order was simple: all ships fire at will. The garrison fleet never had a chance. Human weapons streaked across space, missiles, energy beams, and new hybrid weapons that Doctor's team had invented. The ships tried to raise their shields, but they were too slow. Their captains had grown lazy after 10 years of easy occupation. They had forgotten what it felt like to face real enemies. The first ship exploded in a ball of fire, then the second, then the third. On the orbital stations, alarms blared and officers scrambled to their battle positions. But Admiral Shin had planned for this too. Hidden among the human fleet were ships carrying special forces teams led by General. And her fighters wore stolen armor, modified to fit human bodies. They boarded the stations through maintenance hatches, fighting their way through corridors that had never seen combat. The guards were not warriors. They were bureaucrats and technicians who had never expected to face an enemy on their own station. "This is for Seoul," said as she shot the station commander. "This is for everyone you killed." One by one, the orbital stations fell. Some were captured intact, their systems taken over by human hackers who immediately began downloading every piece of data they could find. Others were destroyed, their nuclear cores overloading and turning them into brief new suns in Earth's sky. Captain led a squadron of fighters against the remaining patrol ships. He was 40 years old now, and he had taught most of the pilots flying beside him. They moved in patterns that no computer could predict, weaving and dodging with a creativity that machine minds could not understand. "Remember your training," told his pilots over the radio. "They think in straight lines, we think in curves." The patrol ships fell one after another. Himself destroyed 3 of them, his weapons finding the tiny gaps in their shields that he had spent years learning to exploit. By dawn, it was over. Every ship in Earth's orbit had been destroyed or captured. Every orbital station had fallen. For the first time in 10 years, humanity looked up at a sky that was free. On the ground, billions of people emerged from their homes and hiding places. They stared at the burning debris falling through the atmosphere, at the human ships now orbiting their planet. Many wept, many prayed, many simply stood in silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. General Park broadcast his message from the Indomitable, his words reaching every radio and screen on Earth. "People of Earth," he said, 10 years ago our sky burned. Today our sky is free. The who occupied our world are gone, destroyed, or captured, but this is not the end of our struggle. This is only the beginning." He paused to let his words sink in. "The Empire still exists. They will send more ships. They will try to take back what they have lost. We must be ready. But more than that, we must go to them. We must show them that humanity will never again be a victim. We must make them understand that attacking Earth was the greatest mistake they ever made." Across the planet, people cheered. In the ruins of Seoul and New York, in the refugee camps and underground shelters, in the mountains where resistance fighters had hidden for years. Everywhere, people raised their voices in hope and defiance. But Admiral Shin knew there was no time for celebration. The Empire would respond, and they would respond with overwhelming force. She ordered her fleet to prepare for the next phase of the war. Within weeks, human ships made their first jump to another star system. Colonel led the ground forces. 5,000 soldiers in stolen and modified transports. Their target was a mining colony in a nearby system, where thousands of slaves from conquered species worked under masters. The colony had minimal defenses. They had never imagined that humans would come to them. When human ships appeared in their sky, the garrison commander refused to believe his own sensors. By the time he accepted the truth, human soldiers were already landing on the surface. Was a quiet man of 50, a former teacher who had joined the resistance after watching his students die in the occupation. He did not enjoy violence, but he understood its necessity. As his soldiers secured the mining facilities, he gave strict orders. No looting, no revenge killings, no torture. They would not become the monsters they were fighting. The alien workers, members of a species called the, who had been enslaved by the for centuries, watched in amazement as human soldiers treated them with respect. They were given food, medical care, and something they had not had in generations: choice. They could stay and work for fair payment, or they could leave and go wherever they wished. Most chose to stay, and many chose to fight alongside their liberators. News of the colony's liberation spread through the empire like wildfire. Slave races on 100 worlds heard the story. Humans had defeated the. Humans were freeing slaves. Humans were offering hope. It was a flame that could not be put out. The emperor of the empire was named the Eternal. He had ruled for 3,000 years, his life extended by advanced technology. In all that time, no enemy had ever defeated his forces and lived to tell about it. The fall of the Earth garrison was an insult beyond anything he had ever experienced. He addressed his war council with cold fury. "These humans are insects," he declared. "They have had a moment of luck, nothing more. Send the Third Imperial Fleet, 500 warships, crush them completely, leave no survivors." The Third Fleet was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Its commander, High Admiral, had conquered dozens of species and never lost a battle. He considered the mission against humanity to be beneath his dignity, a waste of his talents on primitive creatures. "We will be done within a month," he promised his emperor. "These humans will learn their place." General Park received intelligence about the incoming fleet through a network of spies and defectors that humanity had carefully built. 500 warships, enough firepower to destroy Earth 100 times over, enough soldiers to occupy every human colony they had established. He called his commanders together. "They are sending 500 ships," he told them. "We have 200. The mathematics is clear. We should lose, but mathematics has never understood humanity." Admiral Shin studied the intelligence reports. "They will expect us to run or hide. They will expect us to be afraid." "Then we must be something else entirely," General Park replied. Doctor stepped forward. She had been working on something special, a new technology that could change everything. She explained it to the commanders, watching their expressions change from doubt to understanding to fierce hope. "It is risky," she admitted. "It has never been tested in battle, but if it works, we can fight them on our terms." General Park nodded slowly. "Then we will make it work. We have no other choice." He looked at his commanders, the survivors who had become warriors, the scientists who had become weapons makers, the ordinary people who had become extraordinary. "The Third Imperial Fleet thinks they are coming to execute us. Let us show them that they are coming to their own execution instead." Across human space, preparations began. Ships were modified. Weapons were loaded. Soldiers wrote final letters to their families. And in the darkness between stars, the Third Imperial Fleet jumped toward humanity, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The nebula was a cloud of gas and radiation that stretched across 3 light years. Its swirling colors of purple and red were beautiful to look at, but deadly to enter. The radiation could destroy sensitive electronics. The thick gases made sensors unreliable. No sane fleet would choose to fight there. but humanity was no longer sane. They were desperate, determined, and willing to take risks that no other species would consider. Admiral Shin positioned her fleet of 200 ships deep within the nebula and waited. Doctor's new technology, a radiation shielding system that they did not possess, allowed human ships to operate where ships could not. It was their only advantage, and it had to be enough. The Third Imperial Fleet arrived with 500 warships arranged in perfect formation. High Admiral stood on his command ship, looking at the nebula with contempt. "They are hiding in there like frightened animals," he said to his officers. "Pathetic. All ships, enter the nebula and destroy them." His officers hesitated. They knew the radiation was dangerous. They suggested waiting, forcing the humans to come out, fighting on terms that favored the Empire. Dismiss their concerns. "We have superior numbers, superior weapons, and superior warriors. A little radiation will not stop us." It was the mistake that cost him everything. As soon as the fleet entered the nebula, their problems began. Their sensors flickered and failed, unable to penetrate the thick gases. Their shields drained faster than expected, struggling against the constant radiation. Their perfect formation began to break apart as ships lost contact with each other. Then the humans attacked. Human ships came out of the gas clouds like ghosts, striking fast and vanishing before they could respond. They did not fight in formations the Empire recognized. They did not follow patterns that could be predicted. Each ship moved independently, making decisions instantly, adapting to the chaos of battle in ways that computers could not calculate. Captain led his fighter squadron through the heart of the enemy fleet. His pilots weaved between massive warships, targeting engines and weapon systems with precise strikes. They tried to shoot them down, but their targeting systems were confused by the radiation and the unpredictable human movements. "They are thinking about what we will do next," told his pilots. "But we do not know what we will do next. That is our advantage. We are chaos and they cannot understand chaos." General commanded a group of assault ships that targeted command vessels. Her forces would board the enemy ships, fighting through corridors in brutal close combat, killing bridge crews and leaving the ships without leadership. They were not prepared for this kind of warfare. Their ships were designed to fight at a distance, not to be invaded from within. "We learned to fight like this on Earth," told a captain before she killed him. "We learned in the shadows, in the rubble, in the places where your technology could not see us. Did you think we would forget?" The battle raged for 18 hours. The nebula burned with explosions and energy beams. Ships on both sides were destroyed, but the losses were not equal. For every human ship lost, 3 ships fell. High Admiral could not understand what was happening. His fleet was larger. His weapons were more powerful. But the humans refused to fight the way they were supposed to fight. They attacked from unexpected directions. They retreated when they should advance and advanced when they should retreat. They used their own destroyed ships as weapons, sending burning hulks crashing into formations. Commander Ryu was the captain of the cruiser Last Hope. She was 35 years old, and she had joined the fleet after her entire family was killed during the occupation. When her ship was crippled in battle, her engines destroyed and her weapons offline, she made a decision that no could understand. She aimed her dying ship at the command vessel and accelerated. Her final words were broadcast on an open channel so that every ship, human and alike, could hear them. "You should have left us alone," she said. "You should have let us live in peace, but you chose to make us your enemies. Now you will learn what that means." The Last Hope struck the command vessel at full speed. Both ships were destroyed in an explosion that lit up the nebula like a new star. High Admiral was dead. The Third Imperial Fleet was without leadership, and the humans were still fighting. By the time the battle ended, they had lost 340 ships. Humanity had lost 89. It was the worst defeat in the history of the Empire. It was the first time any species had ever broken an Imperial fleet. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. On slave worlds, whispers turned to shouts. They were not invincible. They could be beaten. They could be killed. Doctor did not celebrate the victory. She was already working on the next challenge. The improved engines that Engineer Minu had designed were good, but she believed they could be better. In her laboratory, she worked on a new drive system, something that would allow human ships to travel faster than anything the Empire possessed. After months of work, she succeeded. The new drives could cross distances in hours that would take ships days. Humanity could now strike anywhere in the Empire and escape before reinforcements arrived. "This changes everything," General Park said when she showed him the technology. "We can hit them wherever we want. We can be everywhere and nowhere." "And there is something else," Doctor said. She showed him data from the captured ships. "The Empire has 93 conquered species. All of them are slaves. All of them hate their masters. If we can reach them, if we can arm them, if we can give them hope." General Park understood immediately. Humanity could not defeat the Empire alone. The mathematics was still against them. But if the slaves rose up, if the conquered species joined the fight, the mathematics would change. Ambassador was chosen to lead this new mission. She was 60 years old, a former diplomat who had spent her career trying to maintain peace between nations. The Tokyo attack had killed her husband and son, but instead of being destroyed by grief, she had transformed it into purpose. She traveled to conquered worlds with a simple message. "We are not here to conquer you. We are here to free you. Join us, and together we will destroy those who have enslaved us all." They were the first to answer. They were a species of powerful warriors who had been used as slave soldiers by the Empire for centuries. Their leaders met with in secret, suspicious at first, but gradually convinced by her sincerity. "Why would humans help us?" asked their war chief. "What do you want in return?" "We want partners," replied. "Not subjects. The rule through fear and domination. We want to build something different, an alliance of free peoples who support each other." The war chief was silent for a long time. Then he stood and extended his hand in a gesture that recognized from her studies of their culture. It meant agreement, alliance, brotherhood. "The will fight," he said. "We have waited generations for this moment." One by one, other species joined. The who manufactured weapons for the Empire began sabotaging their own production lines, small defects that would cause weapons to fail at critical moments. The who served as the Empire's administrators started leaking information to human intelligence networks. The who piloted transport ships began smuggling supplies and weapons to resistance movements. The Empire was rotting from within, and they did not even realize it. Emperor finally understood the threat when human ships appeared in orbit around the secondary. They did not attack, they simply appeared, stayed for 1 hour, and then vanished. It was a message: we can reach you anywhere. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Emperor felt something he had forgotten existed. He felt fear. "Find them," he ordered his remaining admirals. "Find them and destroy them, whatever the cost." But how do you find an enemy who can appear anywhere? How do you fight a species that turns your own slaves against you? How do you defeat an opponent who learns from every battle, adapts to every strategy, and never, ever gives up? The Empire was about to learn the answer to these questions, and they would not like what they discovered. General Park looked at the star map showing the Empire's territory. So many worlds, so many enemies, so much work left to do. "We are coming for you," he said quietly. "Every world you stole, every species you enslaved, every crime you committed, we will answer them all." The final phase of the war was about to begin. 23 years had passed since the burning of Earth. 23 years of war, sacrifice, and slow, grinding victory. The Empire was dying. Its slave species had risen up across 100 worlds. Its fleets had been destroyed in battle after battle. Its economy had collapsed as the conquered peoples who had built its wealth turned against it. What had once been the greatest power in the galaxy was now a shrinking island of fear, surrounded by enemies who would not stop until justice was done. General Park stood on the bridge of the Soul Reborn, the flagship of the Allied fleet. He was 75 years old now, his body worn by decades of war, but his spirit remained unbroken. Around him stood the people who had fought beside him since the beginning: Admiral Shin, Doctor, General, and thousands of others who had survived against all odds. Outside the viewports, 1,000 ships waited in formation. Humans and a dozen other species, all united against a common enemy. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. And before them lay Prime. The planet was beautiful in its way. Towering spires of crystal and metal rose toward the sky. Floating cities drifted through the clouds. Gardens of alien plants covered entire continents. It was a world built over 12,000 years of conquest, a monument to the power and pride of an ancient civilization. Today, that civilization would answer for its crimes. Emperor the Eternal watched the Allied fleet approach from his palace. He had lived for 3,000 years, but he had never felt as old as he did now. His empire was crumbling. His fleets were gone. His slaves had turned against him, and the primitives he had dismissed as insects were now at his doorstep. He demanded to speak with the human leader. General Park accepted the call. The Emperor appeared his face twisted with rage and disbelief. He was tall and thin, with silver skin and eyes that burned with ancient fire. Once, that gaze had made entire civilizations surrender. Now it only made General Park smile grimly. "You cannot do this," the Emperor said. "We are a great and ancient people. We built an empire when your species was still living in caves. We have conquered 93 worlds. We have ruled the stars for 12,000 years. You cannot simply destroy us." General Park's voice was calm and cold. "You attacked Earth first. You came to our world uninvited. You burned our cities. You murdered our children. You killed 800 million people in a single day, and you called it pest control." He leaned forward. "You assumed we were weak because we were young. You assumed we would break because we suffered. You assumed we would kneel because we lost. You were wrong about everything." The Emperor's face showed something it had never shown before: fear. "I will give you what you want," he said desperately. "Resources, technology, territories, name your price." General Park shook his head. "There is no price that can buy what you have taken from us. There is no payment that can bring back the dead. There is only justice." He looked at the Emperor with eyes that had seen too much death. "Surrender, stand trial for your crimes. Let the species you have enslaved decide your fate. This is the only chance for mercy that you will receive. It is more mercy than you ever showed us." The Emperor's fear turned to fury. "We will never surrender to animals. We will fight to the last soldier, the last ship, the last breath. You will pay for this insult with blood." General Park nodded slowly. "I expected nothing else. You have made your choice. Now live with the consequences." The transmission ended. General Park turned to Admiral Shin. "Begin the assault. Military targets only. No civilian casualties unless absolutely unavoidable. We will not become what we are fighting against." Admiral Shin nodded and gave the order. 1,000 ships moved forward, their weapons charging. The final battle had begun. The defenses were strong, but they were not strong enough. The orbital stations and defense platforms had been built to repel attacks from species that fought like the predictable, traditional, following rules of engagement that had not changed in. Humanity did not follow those rules. Captain, now Admiral, led the fighter wings through the orbital defenses. He was 52 years old, one of the few pilots from the early resistance who had survived to see this day. His squadron weaved through enemy fire, targeting the weak points that human intelligence had identified over years of careful study. General commanded the ground assault. Her forces landed on the surface, fighting their way through soldiers who had never defended their own before. They did not know how to fight on their own soil. They had always brought war to others. Now war had come to them. The bombardment lasted exactly 1 hour. Human ships targeted military installations, communication centers, and the Emperor's palace with precise strikes. They avoided residential areas, schools, hospitals, all the places that held innocent who had never chosen war. When it was over, the palace was in ruins. The military was destroyed. And Emperor the Eternal was captured alive, pulled from the rubble by human soldiers who had orders to take him without harm. General was the one who placed the restraints on his wrists. She looked at the ancient ruler who had caused so much suffering and felt nothing, no triumph, no joy, just a cold satisfaction that justice would finally be done. For 12,000 years you made others kneel, she said. Now you will face their judgment. The trials lasted 3 years. Representatives from every species that had conquered came to testify. They told stories of genocide and slavery, of cultures destroyed and families torn apart. They spoke of billions of dead, of worlds stripped bare, of horrors that made even hardened soldiers weep. The Emperor and his war council were found guilty of crimes against civilization. Their sentences were decided by a council representing all conquered species, including themselves, who were given a voice in determining their own future. The empire was dissolved. Its territories were divided among the species that had won their freedom. A new organization was formed, not an empire but an alliance of free worlds, where every species had equal standing and no one could dominate another. Humanity, once the youngest and weakest species, found itself at the heart of this new order, not as conquerors or rulers but as partners and protectors. They had proven that strength was not about technology or age or size. It was about will, adaptability, and the refusal to ever give up. General Park did not live to see the alliance fully established. He died peacefully, 2 years after the fall of Prime, surrounded by friends and family. His last words were recorded and shared across all worlds. I have seen the worst of what intelligent beings can do to each other. I have also seen the best. We have proven that even the greatest evil can be overcome by those who refuse to surrender their hope. Remember this, in the dark times that will surely come again. Remember that the universe is not kind, but it can be made better by those who are willing to fight for it. 100 years after the burning of Earth, a statue was unveiled in the rebuilt city of Seoul. It showed General Park, surrounded by figures representing every species of the Alliance, all reaching toward the stars together. The inscription at its base was simple. They thought our tragedy would break us, instead it forged us. We rose not for conquest but for justice, not for empire but for freedom. We are humanity, we do not forget, we do not forgive, and we never ever surrender. In schools across 1,000 worlds, children learned the story of the small blue planet that had the universe. They learned about the dark days of the occupation, the brave resistance, the impossible victories. They learned that hope was always possible, no matter how dark things seemed. And somewhere in the void between stars, the descendants of those first warriors still watched and guarded. Human ships, now joined by ships of 100 species, patrolled the borders of the Alliance, making sure that no tyrant would ever again rise to threaten the innocent. Because humanity had learned a lesson in fire that they would never forget. The stars are not safe. The universe is not kind. There will always be those who try to dominate, to conquer, to destroy. But as long as there are people willing to stand against the darkness, the light will never go out. They had attacked Earth first. They had thought they were ending a story. Instead, they had started one. And that story would echo across the stars for as long as beings existed to tell it.